But you have to.
Engagement. I'm not necessarily representing Imagine MKE, but rather I talked with Anne about how to support you all in moving your conversation forward. So that's what I'm bringing to the conversation today. So just want to let you know, I don't really care what you all talk about, except I want you to get to the results. I have a stake, but I don't have an opinion of it. That's your work. And so our desired results for this conversation today is to build on what Anne just talked about. What might this group work on together, and what might you do in your role to support that? I use the words might because there's no stone tablets at the end of this thing. There's no blood oath, right? It's still it's still sort of a speculative imagine conversation, excuse the pun, because it's unfortunately at my organization, we can't use that word anymore. So now that I'm in your space, I'm going to use it as much as I can. But that being said, my invitation for you is just to think of possibility, right? You're inspired to work together and to see what that may bear out. So to that end, we're going to bring you in on a check-in, recognizing you're coming from other spaces, and some of us might know each other, or some of you don't. And I don't know many of you, so I look forward to learning about you for this conversation. So in this moment, I just put in the chat to take a quiet moment to reflect on this, and we'd love to hear from everyone. The 3 questions I'd like you to respond to is: 1, share your name, role, and affiliation. The second question is, how are you this morning? And that could be 1 or 2 words. And then the last question is, maybe take a second. Imagine that it's 2023. Yes, I jumped in the DeLorean, and we're now with Marty McFly in the future. Imagine it's 2023, and this group of leaders were able to work together powerfully in 2022. What might be a media headline that you would read, you hope would read? It could be in your local paper. That's how you know I'm a Gen Xer, because I still say newspaper, or it might be on your, your tablet. It might be on your media source of choice. But just sort of imagine what would be a really cool headline that you see because of the work of the regional leaders of Create Wisconsin got together and advanced art and creativity in Wisconsin. So I'm going to invite you to take a quiet moment to think about that, and then. When someone's ready, you could raise your hand and start us off. And we'd love to hear, there's only 10 people on there, so I think we can hear each other verbally and estimate if everybody has about a minute of time. That means we get around the check-in in about 10, 11 minutes, which is, in my mind, super reasonable. So someone will begin when you're ready.
Well, we'll have to start.
Oh, I love it. I love it to get multiples.
That's okay. Go ahead. Are you saying that to me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. All right. Good morning. Hi, Nikki. Good morning, everyone. My name is Melanie Talmadge Signs. I'm the founding director of Little Eagle Arts Foundation. Our office is located in Adams County, Wisconsin, just 5 miles north of Wisconsin Dells. And our operating studio is located in Sauk County, 7 miles south of Baraboo. So I welcome everybody. And my affiliation, I guess, is, I don't know, Mac, how to interpret that. My affiliation with this meeting, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, I started as a regional leader last year, I believe. Wasn't it, Anne? I think so. Yeah. And then I had served briefly as a board member for Arts Wisconsin. I'm feeling really good this morning after 3 days of travel, getting down here to Arizona. I'm working out of our Arizona office right now. And when I was kind of reflecting on the Imagine 2023, the term networking really came forward to me in terms of reflecting on what I think would really be strong in terms of strategizing and networking amongst all communities, looking at all the various diversity that's reflected in our beautiful state of Wisconsin.
And I'm gonna thanks, Melanie, for getting us started. And because you started, I get to dance with you a little bit. Okay. And don't worry, I'm not going to dance with everybody. I want to imagine. Tell me what might look like in a headline. Like if I'm reading a paper, like because the networking amongst all communities happened, and we got to see diversity. What might be the headline of an article that you're excited to read?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. Maybe we pick a day to celebrate our network, you know.
Okay, great.
Arts Wisconsin tops 1,500 people in creative network or something. I don't know.
Yeah. That's perfect. You got it started. Thanks so much for getting it started. Because you went first, you get to pick who's next.
Whose face was there? I don't know who the other person who said she wanted to.
I think it was Carolyn.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
go
think it was
Carolyn.
Carolyn.
go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Carolyn Nelson Cavayats. I'm from Superior, Wisconsin. I own Sterling Silver Studio, which is a performing arts school. This is our 31st year. I also am the director of the Ultimate Talent Connection, which is a performing arts competitive and networking organization here in northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan. I am the president for Superior Council for the Arts and on the board for Arts Wisconsin. And today I am feeling groovy. I am in the middle of a studio expansion. We are building an additional dance studio onto our space and an arts and creativity and party room. So I'm super excited for that. That should be done in a couple of weeks. And if I were to find an ideal headline to read in the next year or two, it would be creative entrepreneurship is on the rise in Superior Douglas County.
Right. Awesome. Who's next?
Pick somebody, Carolyn.
Yeah.
How about Jay? He looks ready.
Thank you. Jay Salinas. I'm an artist and farmer from Sauk County, Wisconsin. I am co-founder of Born Farm Institute, where I serve as the director of special projects. I also served on the board of Arts Wisconsin for a while and have been part of the regional leaders network since its inception. I am feeling ambivalent. There's some really cool stuff happening, but then also some very concerning things out there on the horizon or even in the community here. So I try to focus on the good things, but am too much of a skeptic or cynic to give in to unbridled optimism. So okay, my headline for 2023 is Wisconsin rockets to middle of the pack in arts funding per capita, from our current 48 or 50 to 27 or something like that.
Yeah.
That would be transformative.
Thank you, Jay. Who's next?
You pick somebody, Jay.
Yeah, pick somebody on the list.
Let's hear from Greg.
Greg Wright, Executive Director of Cray Portage County in Stevens Point. Been involved in Arts Wisconsin, both as a board member in the past and as a regional leader now. And I'm doing some work with Ann to try to figure out how to make these regional networks as impactful as possible. I am sore this morning. I'm trying to get back in the gym. So I had a 6:20 workout, and I'm trying to, if you see me get up and move, it's because I'm worried that my muscles will solidify in a seated position. So trying to get back there. And then my headline, I wrote it down, is nimble infrastructure in Wisconsin leads to fastest growing creative economy participation rate.
Say that one more time. Nimble
Okay.
infrastructure in Wisconsin.
Nimble infrastructure in Wisconsin leads to fastest growing creative economy participation rate.
Great. That's definitely one of those where it's like it has a little more on the underline, more on the headline, because that's a rich one. Love it. Thank you. Participation rate. Who do you pass on to?
I saw Mary put her hand up, so let's hear from her.
Let's go.
Okay, my name is Mary Bergs, and this is my first participation in any broader arts organization in Wisconsin. So I'm feeling kind of curious today, and maybe a little bit naive. So I am an artist and organizer of a program called Benton Projects. I'm a Wisconsin native, but have lived out of the state for probably almost 40 years, and returned a few years ago to Benton, Wisconsin, which is a small town, less than 1,000 people, in the corner of the state near Platteville, Dubuque, and Galena, Illinois. We're about 20 miles from all those places. I operate a residency program here, single person residency program for artists and writers. And I'm really interested in kind of infiltrating cultural and arts organizations, kind of linking not the usual suspects, but maybe outside of that typical parameter. And my headline for 2023 is Wisconsin artists move forward on multiple collaborations across the state.
Thank you. Who's next? Pass it on.
Choose somebody, Mary.
How about Christina?
All right.
Thank you, Mary. I'm Christina Dalhausen, and my day job is I'm the Economic Development and Tourism Coordinator for Vernon County, which is right in the heart of the Driftless, Viroqua. And so this real rural progressive area. But so basically, I would say that my goal is to become a liaison. I'm a liaison between the government and this creative business sector. And I think if we can build that bridge, is we're going to get further within our mission. And so I try to do that. I play also a lot of different parts and wear a lot of different hats within the community. I call myself a community collaborator, but I'm an artist myself, I'm a musician, and I do plan quite a bit of events that happen in the area, because obviously that's great for like economic development, for direct visitor spending in the works, et cetera. But I keep it fun, and that's actually also my background is marketing and promotions too. I'm doing great. It's not Monday, today's Tuesday. So that's my day for the day. And my headline would be, I don't know, the heart of the Driftless is local live music, arts, and food mecca.
Can you say that one more time, Christina?
I think it's something like, let me just say it right.
Yeah.
Heart of the Driftless is a mecca for local food, live music, and arts.
Yeah, got it.
If you want to put your headlines in the chat, then we will capture them. In
Ah.
I got it. I got you, Ann. I'm on it. I'm on
Okay.
it.
All
I'm
right, good.
capturing it right now just to make sure I got it. Thanks for supporting it. Christina, pass it on.
I'm going to pass it on to, let me just click through here. Melinda.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. I am Melinda Childs, and I am in the Rhinelander, Tomahawk, Northwoods of Wisconsin area. And I work with Art Start Rhinelander in a shared position also with Nicolay College and doing community and cultural development. So a lot of different hats, a lot of different projects. I actually knew Mary in my former life. I don't know if you remember me, but it's nice to see your face when I used to work at Forecast. So that's cool to see you again, some Minneapolis blood flowing. And I'm really good today because I didn't think I liked daylight savings time, but it is a lot easier to get up earlier. And I did find time to do a quick yoga and go for a walk in the woods. Although I made my uncle, who was out bow hunting, unhappy, but he did not tell me that he was out bow hunting. So we have some shared property that our family uses, and we have a pretty good Facebook group about who is doing what when, but that didn't happen this morning, but I still feel good. And I am struggling with my headline.
Yeah.
My initial headline was Wisconsin leads the nation in everything, but
Okay.
I think that might be a little ambitious. So I was trying to pare it down. I'm kind of going with Wisconsin leads the nation in embracing and activating creativity as a tool for, then I got ambitious again and couldn't decide what. Social change, new ways to think about community development. Is an open-ended headline.
Awesome.
It's kind of like choose your own adventure.
Oh man, that's the new media. Melinda, you got the new media down. You're ahead of the game. Appreciate you. And again, I only gave you a minute to do it. Usually I have a lot more time to write an article. So thanks for playing ball. Who do you want to pass it on to? This is the fun part of the game. We're like, okay, who's spoken, who's not spoken.
I'm going to pass it to David.
All right.
Hey everybody, David Lee, CEO over at Imagine MKE, and I would just want to reiterate that today, in the next hour or so, I'm not Mac's boss. I'm just a guy in participating in this meeting with all of you. I am a little bit overwhelmed this morning. We have our conference or summit next Tuesday, which up until about 3 weeks ago was supposed to be virtual and now is in person. We have almost 200 people signed up for it, which is incredible. And my headline for 2023, when this group works powerfully together in 2022, is that WEDC announces arts, culture, and creativity as core catalysts for growth in the state.
Hey, pass it on.
Kim, I think, is the last person before Ann.
Hey everybody, Kim Brooks. I am a small business owner, developer, community development advocate up here in Marinette, Wisconsin, working hard right now on bringing World Fest to our community next fall. I am feeling fantastic today because we just secured really major funding for a revamp of our local theater, both physical and audio, visual. So that's pretty exciting. So my headline for 2023 would start with newly reelected Governor Evers and freshman U.S. Democratic Senator announce a financial package of support for the creative economy.
Excellent. I think I'm last, yes?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Ann Katz. I'm Director of Arts Wisconsin, the state's community cultural development organization. Working on a lot of things that are leading to all of the exciting stuff that you guys have talked about. We're moving forward, and again, as Greg mentioned, we're working very closely with Cray Portage County and lots of other people to move the creative economy forward. So today I'm feeling excited because I'm about to leave at noon on a cross-country road trip that will take me to LA, and then I'm going to fly to Charleston for a meeting, my first meeting in a year and a half with my statewide organization, or more than that, statewide organization colleagues. We're planning some big national stuff. A little anxious about getting work done while I'm traveling because the work is exciting and needs to be done. And the headline is a conglomeration of what you've all said, but advocacy and activism lead to strong creative economy infrastructure, access to opportunities for all, and increased funding on all levels.
Great.
Thank you all.
All right, welcome. Thanks for and increased funding at all levels, right? Great. Awesome.
Resources to make these things happen.
I can just say, or at least my observation, thanks everybody for playing along on that headlines game. And so one of my first observations is, I guess none of us work in media because I don't think this would get past our editors for a headline. They'd be like, you got to chop that down. But in all seriousness, what I'm going to do is put it in the chat. So again, thanks for checking in, recognizing you're coming in from other places. And hopefully my hope is that you got to imagine a little bit of the future and possibility. My hope is that that is a bright start to the conversation, although it sounds like many of you already had a bright start to the day. I put in the chat, just want to move to a technical element right now. This is where you got two options. Somebody said choose your own adventure. I love that analogy. I'm going to share it with you right now. I'm participating or setting this up on a platform called Mural. It's almost like imagine a whiteboard, right? That's what it is. It's a virtual whiteboard. So maybe you've had experience with something like Jamboard or Miro. It's like one of those tools. So you're welcome to click on that link and you could play along and write alongside. Now, again, recognize maybe that doesn't work for everybody or text an issue or something. So what I'm also going to do is share my screen at the same time so you're not left out. And if you'd like to add something at some point when I invite people to share to the board, just put it in the chat and I'll transcribe it over. So that being said, hopefully you see, did I share the right thing here? Let's try it again. All right, so I want to share with you the board. Hopefully that's it. I see some of you jumping over. So as you noticed over here, please confirm for me that if you're looking at the shared screen, that you see the headlines that I just transcribed over. Thumbs up? Yeah. All right, great. I also put in Post-it notes around there, just the emotions or the feelings that you had as you're coming in, just to reaffirm how the room's in. Also want to acknowledge I wasn't able to get all the headline medias of all your areas. As it was, sometimes it's hard to find that on Google Press or Google Images. Also want to acknowledge the Gannett company pretty much almost owns all the papers in Wisconsin. That was my other learning of it, as I looked at every Milwaukee Journal, Sentinel, Green Bay Press Gazette, all have similar. These are things I picked up. That being said, want to set us up, right? Like you start with the end in mind, or start with the future in mind, and you all started with what would a 2023 look like, right? If the work of this group contributes to this, and I note contributes. You're not all responsible, right, for just making those things happen. You all hold roles that can move something that can help make that happen, right? So that's sort of the frame for this, and so want to share with you all that this is what you all put together, and. Quick open-ended reaction. What's your reaction just seeing all those headlines on there? Like what, again, you don't have to raise your hand, we're just open discussion. Just like what's just your reaction to seeing this in front of you?
Very little is inconceivable on there. At least 2/3 of those things seem like they could be in the realm of possibility.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Thanks, Jay. And this is from the cynic. The cynic offers this up, right? That's right. So if the cynic's like 2/3, that's like for non-cynics, that's like 85%. So we're looking at a 66, and that's non-math right now. I'm not a math man. I just made that stat up. But no, thank you, Jay, for offering that up, right? That's within the realm of possibility, right? Awesome. Other reactions to what you see on the board there?
There's like a common theme of like infrastructure and outcome, like new infrastructure leads to said outcome in almost all of these.
Greg, if you could use another word for infrastructure, or what might be other phrases for infrastructure? That
I mean, resources, networking, there's some sort of specific action taken by a group of people to lead to a specific result.
Great. Awesome. Right. So just to build off that, right? Like these things that you just put in front, these things are a result of a lot of different actions, or a lot of different events, and a lot of different things, right? They don't happen necessarily on their own, right? They build on top of things, or things that happen. So that's the next conversation I want to invite you to think about, right? Is that, things had to happen for Wisconsin rocketing to becoming the 27th in arts funding per capita, right? And again, I want to be clear, it's not all on you to make those things happen. Things in the environment, right? Things in the ecosystem fostered the condition for that to happen. And so that's the next conversation I want you to think about. And so what I'd like you to do is just take a quiet 2 moments for yourself, just to journal to yourself, and think about like, well, what had to happen for these headlines to become possible? And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that you had to make it happen. What had to happen at the state, or what had to happen in this ecosystem for those to become possible? I'm going to put a timer up here for about 2 quiet moments. So again, you don't have to respond right away. But I'll give you a cue, and when we can start populating that, right? We'll populate that with ideas and thoughts and possibilities. So take a quiet 2 moments to journal for yourself of what had to happen in this ecosystem for those headlines to become possible. All right, as we're heading at the end of this sort of 2-minute reflection opportunity, you're welcome to keep journaling, or so we'd like to start adding to this box. So here's a way to do that. Let me pause my timer. What you can do is, some of you notice, like David, who's a veteran at this, you notice where I click on this little Post-it over here, if you're in the mural, and you could drag a note, and then it opens up a cursor, and then I can type in an idea, and then boom, you just added something. Or you could type it in the chat and I'll transcribe it on your behalf, right? So let's take a few moments to write down, I'll put down 4 minutes just for open time for people to add to this part, is what had to happen for those headlines. And you can type it in the chat. I'd be happy to transcribe it for you. Got about 2 minutes left in this creation session, which is great. And hopefully those that have messaged me or put in the chat, I've been able to transcribe. Ooh, here we go. Just missed that one. Under a minute left. Oh, thank you, Christina. put that in. Very well, look at this, a flurry at the last second here. Thank you, Jay. I'll put that in there. All right. Move this over. All right. Okay. Definitely, this is what y'all put together in terms of this is what had to happen to lead to those headlines. Right? You have a network that's inclusive, focus, communication, strategy, data collection. Networks have to be activated. All this doing this work are supported, encouraged, and paid, and allowed to rest when needed. Visible success stories. So these are elements that have to happen. Just any reaction, what people are seeing in these pieces? Is there something that surprises you? Is there something that affirms something deeply for you as you see what other folks have written? Does this check out for you? Or are there any things that are super outliers for you that you're wondering about? Or maybe is there anything you need more clarity on? Maybe somebody put an idea out there and is like, oh, tell me more about that.
You know, we're all doing this work. This work is all happening. It's just that we need more strategy, more focus, more networking, I'm looking more diversity, more access. You know, we need to have more of a strategy. Or no more of a, we keep going back to the word infrastructure, but we need to take the good work that's being done and make it more visible.
Okay.
Which is what we're working on doing, right?
So making something more visible, because I was going to offer up, I'm curious about that. And you say we need more strategy. And I would offer, you also said in the first thing that there's a lot of this already happening. To me, that lands, there's lots of strategies being employed. So I'm sort of wondering when you say more strategy, and it's out of heard made more visible, could you just clarify for me when, what is another phrase for more strategy? Because I almost feel that there's contrasting things where if everybody's doing it, there's strategies that are being employed, right, or deployed. Do you have a reaction to that, or maybe a honing of what you mean by more strategy?
There are strategies that are being deployed, no doubt, and a lot of great work happening from the ground up. I think, from the statewide perspective, our responsibility is to help make all of those different strategies, keep them their own unique strategies, and combine them or coalesce them, whatever the word is, into a statewide whole so that there's more impact. So I think I agree, there are lots of strategies and lots of good work, and there needs to be more coalescing,
right,
and more to result in more visibility.
Right. So what I'm hearing you say, Ann, is there's something about recognizing uniqueness, right? Given that the state is diverse in region, in people, all these. So there's got to be stuff that's specific to those areas and the people. At the same time, what is the opportunity for alignment so that there's more impact, more visibility, and which could perhaps help change a story, right? Or change a larger narrative. Did I capture that correctly? Or
Yeah, and I mean, that's the challenge and the opportunity. We have to build what we have from the authentic, unique qualities, issues, people, communities that are around the state, and find those the common ground and the common goals that will help everyone succeed in their own ways.
Cool. Okay, thanks. Any other thoughts before we of reactions to this, or perhaps what reactions what other folks have said?
I would just jump on this strategy discussion. And I mean, for me, maybe it's just because they're the ones in the biggest print, but that focus, strategy, and data collection seems to be like those really jump out at me in terms of wanting to build a statewide coalition or initiative that, yes, there's lots of strategies happening on the ground, but we're just not unified. And that takes a larger overarching, I mean, it does take focus and building that connection. And I think the data collection is a piece of that, because it's all about not just telling these stories and proving their effectiveness. Anne's been doing that for years, but what's that next level? How do we take it to the next level?
So you're noting that there's something about unifying. The word unifying came up. Is that right, Melinda? Right, this notion of these are important things: focused strategy and data collection. Yet how to aggregate better, unify better, align better. Right? I don't know if these are the word. I'm finding
those are good
words.
Those are good.
Great, awesome. I want to share one more thing for you all, just to chew on alongside. And everything I'm offering, we're sharing today, this is like a sampler platter, right? We're not going to solve the world in 90 minutes, right? But my hope is that we're going to introduce pieces for you to continue to chew on in service to the conversation and build off it. And so I want to share with you this framework, which is an iceberg. Is this familiar to anyone in the room? Or is this, anybody have, raise of hands or nods of like, I've seen this before, or this resonates with me? Yeah. Who does? Can someone share with me if they have experience with it, what it means to them, perhaps as a way to just sort of share out and we can come out on alignment, because I would love to hear your take on it, just to make sure. What do you got? Who wants to give it a whirl? What they think? How does this resonate with the conversation we just had here? This is not meant to be like a test. There's no Ford Festiva we're giving away after this. Just curious, just again. If not, I'd be happy to do it, but I always like to welcome the room. Always like to welcome the wisdom in the room, right? To react.
So I would say that the majority of the work needs to be done at the bottom there.
Sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So Mary, I want to build off this, right? So what we did, right, in the way the events, so this is an iceberg, right? And like most icebergs, there's stuff at the top and there's lots of layers, right? We don't see what's underneath the water, right? So one might offer in this analogy, the headlines you just generated, those were the things that happened at the event level, right? That's what's visible to people. However, those events don't happen in a vacuum. They build on layers on layers. And like you talked about, Mary, there's 3 layers that in this model, right, in this framework that these events occur from, right? They don't come from whole cloth. At the top level, they come from patterns of behavior, right? How are actors in the system interacting with each other, right? Behaving, right? What are the patterns of behavior, right? And so in that purple box, you listed some examples of ways that folks could behave together in a way, right? How might the state legislator behave in a way? How might you each other unify, right? So you're sort of suggesting there are patterns of behavior that are happening currently, but what might be ways of behaving together that would shift that, right? The thing that also builds upon also is the structure of the system, right? What influences behaviors is both physical geography. This is a big state. People are wide distance apart, right? That limits the ability sometimes. Sometimes it's also silos and physical buildings and walls that indicate how actors engage each other. And there's also virtual geography, I like to say. What are the laws and policies and schedules that all these actors have with each other, right? That allow them to connect and interact with each other or support the interaction with each other to do the behaviors. So there's structures, right? The way the system itself is structured influences patterns of behavior. And finally, what Mary looked to, right? Mary's eyes got big at the bottom, mental models. These are the assumptions, beliefs, and values that folks hold about the system as a whole, right? These are, so again, right? Like, things can change. And the reason why it's at the bottom, right, is that's super powerful, right? It's incredibly powerful. That can help change, that can move a lot of events. The challenge with mental models is have you tried changing someone's priorities? Have you tried changing someone's values? Super difficult, right? Because they're so deep-seated and embedded. That's almost like the long work, right? That's like the longer term work. And so again, want to invite you to think about what are the things that you came up with and where do they land, on this, right? And the thought is, if you're tackling, like Mary said, like, gosh, we should probably be tackling mental models. If that's your sole play, that's going to be a longer term play, right? That because it takes a long time to change hearts and minds. Oh my goodness, we're living through it right now, right? Don't you know? At the same time, right? Doesn't mean you could work on other things in parallel. Or maybe this group might want to work at specific patterns of behavior, and that's fine. That's right for that, right? And I love David's already starting to put stuff over. Yeah, you're welcome to start moving over if you like and dragging over. Where do you sort of see these fitting? And so what are some reactions folks have to this, or what are folks seeing over here? How does this resonate with you? How is this landing on you? Is there anything we're missing? This might be missing. Like, I didn't think about this, but it could be.
This is Christina.
Yeah.
The way I'm trying to relate this to other potential successful patterns and initiatives, and like how people, how you can change that. And they have to see it. They have to see it to believe it. And that's actually when I think about this whole thing and the conversations we've been having, is just like, if we could have, ideas, obviously, and money to make these things happen, and people can see those real change that are happening in the rural community or their local communities, then, those powers that be that actually give more money for projects and see that firsthand, then that generates that. So it's almost like startup funds. If there were startup funds to kind of make something happen, that they're like, oh, we didn't have to pay for that, but my gosh, all of our businesses are doing great downtown, and all this other stuff is great, and people are moving to town. Like, they see that, like, beginning to end stuff. Then at the end of, not the end, there's never an end, but at least they start going like, oh, now I see it. It's the same kind of thing of like where I have this business park that I'm working on in economic development, and they thought it was just like dead in the water until all of a sudden there are 2 businesses that are setting up, their multi-million-dollar, developments, and that now they can see it being built. So they go, oh, that really does work, huh? And they're going to employ 50 people,
So Christina, and again, let me dance with you a little bit to make sure I'm tracking or invite to play on this iceberg. Right now, there's a mental model that this doesn't work. I don't see the connection, right? But one possible way to change that mental model is to literally constantly reinforce examples of how this is changing things, and that changes the structures of the system. You have to make certain things more visible, and you have to do behaviors that amplify things, that amplify these examples more, that allow this to do. And then over time, that's going to shift how people see that, right? That's how a mental model can be shifted by the relentless in your example. And so how might that be applied? How might be applied to the problem you're solving? And again, what I want to hold is there's only so much of the problem you're going to solve of this group, right? So you're not going to solve it all. You're going to think about what is the scope that's right for this group to take on together to do that. So we're looking at the big, right? And inviting you to think of, what of all that, what might be the most, what might be the thing of this group that might want to take on more and tackle more. Okay, cool. So to that end, right? This iceberg is a nice thing to come back to down the road, right? Or at other times to sort of see, hey, what levels are we operating on, or how, or where do we want to focus right now? But ideally, whatever you're doing does have a connection to a mental model shift, ideally, because that's ultimately the larger play. They would say, like, for example, I will share from my own experience in Milwaukee. One of the mental models we're challenging is that arts are only for wealthy people, right? Because you got to buy a ticket, and it's a curated piece that's on a alabaster marble that's under hot lights, and there's a little plaque next to it that tells you what the art is. Like, I think for a lot of people, that's a mental model of what art is. And a mental model we want to shift art to is art is actually like the sun. It's like water. It's what you went to when the pandemic hit to help you get human and to stay sane. This needs to be accessible to everybody, right? Those are two different mental models. And if the second mental model was true, right, we'd be a lot closer to Minnesota, right, which has $2.72 per capita spending, because they tied a state amendment of arts to the land and to that. They literally tied it to the environment, right? So they actually were able to make that mental model shift and then make sure that their laws reflect that. So again, that's a down the road piece, but that's an example of a mental model shift in play that, at least in Milwaukee, our shop is looking at how do we shift that, right, and change that. So
It's
awesome.
$7 per capita, Mac, not
Oh,
two.
now it's now $7. Yeah. There you go. How about it, Twin Cities? That being said, let's do a quick poll right here. And so what I'm going to invite you all to do is we're going to do what we call a voting session. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to invite you to click on these Post-it notes in the purple area. And what it is just like, what interests you most? And I'm going to give you 3 votes. As you see, I'm going to share. And so if you're on the mural, what's going to happen is you're going to have the opportunity just to click on one of these Post-its. And then you can click on it 3 times, or you can click on 3 different ideas. And if you're not in the mural, that's okay. Just tell me in the chat, and then I'll put it on your behalf. I'll put a vote in there on your behalf. But we want to just take a pulse check of all these things that y'all have posted. What is the idea that most gets you going? Or what is the idea that or ideas that you're most intrigued by? And so it says here that, it says that hopefully that showed up for you. Let me know if it's difficult if you're on the mural. And if you're not on the mural, I'll just scroll in here and sort of say, chat me, and I can tally up a vote on your behalf. And this is just a pulse check again. There's no, all right. So we see Visiting Seahorse and David have started to vote. Thanks, I'll put that there. And you have up to 3 votes. Again, like I said, you could click 3 energy dots on one idea, or you can share them across 3 different ones. Just want to get a sense of what is the ones that folks that really resonates with you. Great. Yeah, I got you. All right. Let's do one more minute here in the voting and just do a pulse check of the room. Okay. Great. Let's see here. Okay. Well, we'll do a pause right here and sort of see what the reaction is. So this shows up for everyone how what resonated for them. So and I voted on behalf of folks that went in the chat. I had 3 votes, and so people gave me some votes in the chat, and I put that right. So it said network is inclusive, diverse, and welcoming. Strengthen the ways that connect in-person meetings, online events. So there's a constant flow of ideas, news, and discussion, and this increased focus had 2 unique voters. So show visible success stories got 2, and then somebody really liked the iceberg, which is kind of cool, or maybe it was just a round click. That's okay. And here's some other ideas that got energy right there. So that's what interested the group. And some other folks chatted to me a little bit later, interest around government and networking initiatives, as well as making sure that the network is inclusive. And so we have about a half hour left in our conversation because I'm very aware of our pieces and want to pivot to, I'm going to drag the ones that got 3 votes over just to have as just a point of reference for this next conversation. And again, this is still a speculative conversation, right? Again, it's not trying to commit people to things that they don't want, but wanted to think of ways that there's something about that this group, again, just highlighting to get closer to those headlines, that'd be great, right? These are the things that needed to happen in support of that. And so this is the ones that got the most energy from the group, and I'm carrying it out for the group to discuss further. And so want to have an open, let's open this up to maybe a discussion, right? And that we're gonna do 3 sets, want to run through questions here, which is first, what did this group do? What did this group do together that made that happen, or move closer to this, right? And so you're welcome to put in the chat, and you don't have to type it in the thing for you. They can have an open discussion. It's just general overviews, like what might have this group done that led to that. And when I say this group, it's a combination of y'all or maybe new people that have not been included yet, but this body of leaders. What did this group do together? And I'll set about 5 minutes for this conversation, just as a guide.
To help drive the top priority of strengthening the ways we connect in person, in in-person meetings, online events, so on and so forth, I would say that this group would come together and help to build the online community, that the online Create Wisconsin community that is on our Mighty Networks page. Given that I think we were still in pilot phase, and I think if we are all committing to strengthen the ways we connect in these meetings, offline, and everything else, this is a pathway for us to really sort of, make those connections in between these meetings, host, talking points, sort of do all the things that I think we've been talking about for the last few months now.
Thanks, David. What else did this group do that moved closer to having those things that had the most energy?
Mac, are we post-it noting or are we chatting right now?
Why don't you chat? I'll do it for you. So it's a group conversation, and I'll write it on here. Go ahead.
I guess one thing that I've been thinking about is like recognizing sub channels within or sub networks within the creative network that, the creative economy represents a lot of different types of work. And then I think sometimes we struggle because we're trying to do it through a single network instead of activating sub networks within specific topic areas where we can have more impact. So I think that would be one thing to think about as well, is how do we enable people to participate in the parts of the conversation that are valuable to them without having to be a part of all of the conversation, and how do we make more fluid participation easier for people to gain support from the network when it's valuable, but not to feel like they need to be a part of every conversation to do so.
Thanks, Greg. What else did the group do?
Can you fit all of that on one card?
There you go. What else did the group do?
I think also related to the communication piece, I mean, just broad overview, there's the building, the infrastructure. So we need to be very clear about what we're asking people to participate in and at what level, if it's a subgroup or whatever. And then we need to make the invitation. And that kind of speaks both to the communication and also to the inclusivity and welcoming. But you can't make the invitation until you are very clear about what you're inviting people to do.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Thank you. What else? What else did the group do? Don't mind me. I'm just garnishing. I'm just garnishing the visuals. Please, I can keep up. This has been my life for the last 20 months, jockeying this thing. What else? What else did this group do? Could, might. Again, we're not signing contracts in blood after this one. It's just thinking through what would the group have, what would this group might do?
I'd like to add something
Mhm.
To recognize who's already sitting at the table and who's not.
Mhm.
And keep expanding that network. You know, there are always going to be people who are not at the table yet, and we're always going to have to keep expanding the network to make it relevant, participatory, useful, effective. That's an ongoing thing. It's an ongoing good thing, because the more voices heard, the better.
Got it. Under a minute left here, almost 10 seconds. What other things did this group do together to make sure it move closer to these things?
So I have a question.
Go ahead.
Did anybody else leave our last meeting together thinking about that presentation of grid and wondering how we could make that kind of a framework for us? Because while that's centered around entrepreneurship, it is answering all of the same kinds of questions in terms of networking and subgroups and keeping everybody at the table. And I wake up thinking about that. And I do see a lot of parallels.
I wasn't at that meeting, so could you let me know just how I would capture that, Kim? Just like, is it what would you say that? How could I? What did the group do? Is it like create a formal thing? Could you help me out on that so I can make sure I capture it?
Anne, can you speak to that better? I mean,
yeah, Melinda can speak to the grid maybe for a minute. I'll just introduce that by saying that that's that whole structure, we keep talking about infrastructure, is what we keep, is the point of Create Wisconsin and the regional leaders and the work that Arts Wisconsin and Create Portage County are starting to do together to help build that infrastructure in each part of the state so that each region can be its own unique infrastructure and connected to the larger whole. So I mean, I'm just agreeing with you, Kim, by saying, yes, I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about this as well, and that's what we're working on. But Melinda, can you just kind of give Mac a little briefly about what Tony talked about, and what the grid is?
And there was a few other folks that missed that presentation too, but the grid is an initiative up here in the Northwoods, really kind of spearheaded by Nicolay College, but in partnership with a lot of our economic development corporations. And it really, the main goal of it is to just coalesce all the resources that exist up here to support economic development, entrepreneurship, workforce development, everything around that, you know. So we have all these different organizations in a relatively small space doing the same thing. And we didn't need another organization to do it, but we were finding people still didn't know where to go or what resource was the best fit for them. So right now it's primarily a website. They're looking at potentially making it an app. The in-person offerings were obviously kind of thwarted by COVID, but in a lot of ways it's just connecting. It's just making sure everybody is part of the conversation, and it's cross promotion and providing an entry point for people who want to access these resources.
Mm-hmm. So there's some sort of alignment. So again, not that this group takes on workforce dev, that's what the grid does, but there's something about how it's all in one is what I'm getting a sense, right? That it was all in, am I tracking?
A coordinating location, physical and online.
Okay, great.
And there was a big data gathering part of that too, resource navigating, resource mapping.
Great. And then now it's associated with data gathering. Great. Great.
Yes, I was trying to unmute.
Yeah, great. All right. The next, so again, this is recognizing this is draft thought, right? And just trying to help shape your conversation that you may continue after this, right? Is that the next thing is like, what would be the standard that this group did, right? So hypothetically, for example, it's like, recognize who is sitting at the table, who is not. How do you know that you did that, right? Or what would be a standard that meets that? Or like it says, keep expanding the network. What might be that? David, I'll charge you just because you're so used to, we play this game all the time in our office, right? So if I were to go, what's the standard of, if you wanted to just tease out the idea, I'm not saying you're attached to that idea, but just tease out the idea of building an online Create Wisconsin community. What might be the standard that you would go like, oh, okay, this was done. The group did this to a standard that
we had an 85% engagement rate
Okay.
on our Mighty Network site. And that, you know,
what does engagement rate mean in this rate?
that members of the Create Wisconsin Coalition engage with the content, create or engage with the content on the Mighty Network site in at a rate of 85% or greater.
And what is it, again, is it a technical term? What does it mean? Is it they click on it? What does that mean? They engage, they read it, they click on it. Like, why do you know that? Just to get clarity on what engage means.
They generate and like content that connects, that promotes connection amongst the state group.
So again, and just walking it back, if there was 10 people in this list, then over 8 of them created or like content. That's how do you know they're engaged? Right?
Every week. I should say every week.
Thank you. Okay, great.
Time boundary. I forgot about the time boundary.
Forgot about time boundary. You're a bad A student.
Yes.
David, and that hits harder Asian to Asian, by the way.
That hits harder Asian.
That hits harder Asian. All right.
You're gonna have to write my mom, right? You're gonna have to email her.
Yeah, you're now proclivity to the conversations in our office all the time. What else? So thanks for playing along, David. And just again, we're not saying that this is the standard, but just kind of getting your mindset. What is the standard that could be, right? And just getting your head around that. So I'm just going to put a few minutes on the board, and again, just play with this. What does that mean to you all? Like, what would mean for making invitations, or what expanding the network? And there's a level of like a number, and there's also a time sense of like just a sense that y'all that this group collectively made tried that to do that. What else? Or what would be your action where it says coordinated location, physical, virtual that house resources, and also had data gathering, resource mapping. So what might be a standard for that? Or the other ones, just what do you think?
Well, working to ensure that the network is inclusive and diverse probably means numerous invitations to numerous events, right? Mm-hmm. People are always going to get missed. So how do you determine the best way to do this effective outreach that gets maximum participation from the broadest range of participants?
Mm-hmm. So let's keep playing that game, Jay. Let's say that there were like 3 events. How would you know that there was intentionality around inviting there? What might be a way? And again, this isn't the best answer. It's just our answer. It's just a standard. What do you think, Jay? What do you think?
I guess working to ensure that the core group represents enough of the constituencies that the outreach has sufficient reach in order to surface those individuals or organizations whose input and assistance will help to fulfill this the goal here. So
How do you know you hit that?
yeah, right.
That's
Well,
good.
you never will. You'll never be ideal, but I mean, they're so they're, we always like the model of the progressive dinner where there's a core group that you pick, and then each subsequent meeting, those folks are charged with going and finding additional people who and 3 or 4 rounds of that, and of course you're not everyone will choose to participate, but the invitation has to be extended for sure.
What might be a good number for that? Like how many more people should those folks invite? That's just a great example, right? So like you have 10 people in your core group. How many more should invite for the next meeting?
3 to 5 at least.
3 to 5, right? Awesome. Thanks for dancing, Jay, on that, right? Like, and again, the key about the standard thing is that these are all hypotheses. Like if we tried this, maybe something shifts, right? Maybe, you come back and go, okay, after the third one, did more people come? And if not, maybe it isn't the number of people we invite, but it's the way we invite people. It's things to think about, right? And just want to invite you to keep thinking about that. Again, want to recognize you get the essence of that conversation, or I hope you do, in the sense of whatever you want to do, think of like what is the standard of success that this group would like to do at some point. And again, the last question I'd like you to think about, and again, we don't have to necessarily speak to this right now, is thinking about what might you do from your role, right, to support that. So you're not charged with doing all of it, but what is something you could do from your role? And I'll leave this as sort of like a reflective question. You don't necessarily need to answer that in the moment now, but I'll pick on David because I get to pick on him now because after this call, I have to recognize the chain of command and say sir and salute at all times. But on this call, right? David might be able to do something from role with the online if Mighty Network is the platform, right? David, what might you do from your role in support of that?
We will continue our subscription, make it available for this group, and make invites out to everybody to utilize it. We can also I can even volunteer Mac to do some trainings for what that might look like, and and that's what we can do from
that's a thing, right? Like and that's what David did think of, like what's appropriate from his role in support of that, what might be appropriate from your role from this. And we won't necessarily go into this, but like at some point as you continue to flesh this out, you might want to think about what are you all bringing to the potluck that helps that group reach the standard. One more question I'd like you to also think about is reality check, right? Is recognizing you have there might be possible barriers to this, or what would have to be true to make it worthy of adapting your behavior. And so I would like to have this conversation, or just invite a few moments for you to have this conversation, being what are the possible barriers for you to move in this, to move towards working as a group in this way. This is different from how you've worked together. So what might be possible barriers, and I'd be more specific for you. And again, you don't have to necessarily, these might apply to everyone, but would look to welcome some possible suggestions of what might be a barrier for your participation or for your full commitment into something like this. The other part is what would have to be true to make it worthy of you increasing your focus in this way, or adapting your behavior in doing this way. What are possible barriers?
Geography is certainly a significant barrier, as we've talked about earlier, and we've attempted to address that by developing the idea of region meetings. But each of those regions are still pretty large in and of themselves.
So a notion of geography is a barrier, but maybe a way to meet that is regional accessibility might be a path. Is that right? A way, right?
I mean, and where these platforms here are a very good way to overcome those geographies, but they are no substitute for being in each other's presence.
Sure. Right. Right. So there's something about
On the
actual
other-
physical real time that has to happen. Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, there is nothing that replaces actual human contact, which is, well, one of the things we've learned in the pandemic. On the other hand, we had Zoom before, but we didn't use it. I mean, we didn't know how to use it. We didn't know we weren't forced to. And so now that we've been forced to, I think that some of the connections can be made in this way, are being made in this way, that can be very beneficial. Plus all the technology, understanding that there has to be that human contact throughout as well. But I think the whole way of connecting this way, we would never have had this kind of meeting before the pandemic. I mean, I had Skype, but that was I didn't use it. So I appreciate that. I don't like the fact that it took a pandemic to make us think about it, but I appreciate the fact that we now have this as a tool.
What are other possible barriers for you to participate in this way? Or what else would have to be true for you to adapt your behavior? Recognizing to generate those headlines and to act in a different way will require modification on how you currently engage. And so what would have to be true to make it worth that adaptation?
I was thinking about, like, there's a tension between the urgency of the moment and the work we have to do now and the work it takes to actually build this. I think we sometimes run into that where we all have needs and we all have projects and we all have opportunities we don't want to miss right now. But it also is going to take some time for us to build this infrastructure in the right way. I think there's that tension is one that we struggle with. How do we put the time into getting this set up correctly so that it can do the work for us that we want it to do?
Where do the resources come from?
So is that a possible barrier? Is that having enough resources for this group to function in this way? Is that something?
I think it's a concern for everybody.
Sure.
There's nothing you can't do with time, money, and staff. And you always try to have enough of all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But there's probably very few people on this call who would think that they have sufficient of any of those things. So there's the work that we all have to do in our daily lives to move our individual initiatives along. And then there's this larger project outside of ourselves with more distant and maybe, I don't want to say nebulous, but less tangible rewards that one would have to devote extended time in order to realize.
What Jay's lifting up is the notion of competing commitments, right? And that's real, right? Because you all hold roles outside of this call, right? And so there's going to be times when those projects are going to be super urgent, and they may come at the time, talent, and staff of the ability to apply to this, right? So those are possible barriers. That's real barriers just to acknowledge, right? And to do. And so what would have to be true to meet that, what might have to be true in order for that to acknowledge if competing commitments were real? What would have to be true for this commitment to perhaps maybe win a few more times?
I think maybe just having a set plan, saying this is what we're going to do. And I think, this conversation that we're having right now, or this focus group is, certainly a step in the right direction to having a plan, but knowing exactly what, we're going to do moving forward would, certainly help me fully commit to, okay, here's what I need to do. I can set aside this amount of time and I can take this specific action.
Mm-hmm.
if I can build on that a little bit, and I was just about to jump in, is this idea, and for those of you who can't come to our summit on Tuesday, I'm going to give you just a little bit of a sneak preview of some of the conversation from the dais, which is we have to, I think the enabling thing for me, right, is that if this group or our region or our state or arts and culture organizations in whatever ecosystem that we're operating in really begin to connect to each other and literally begin to will the good of the other as other, right? That we have to will the good of each other as another entity, as another person, as another group. And that is the thing that sort of shifts us from scarcity to abundance. And we've been trying to, we hope to model that, and we hope we have been. And if not, I'm happy to take the complaints in the complaint box, particularly from Mac. But, insofar as how we flip that switch, right, that mental model from scarcity to abundance, I think that is something that has to be true for me, right, is that everybody's sort of continuing to will the good of the other as other.
Well, I want to, thanks for, again, taking the time. Like I said, today's a sample of the platter. It's not the main entree, right? I think the previous comment, my Zoom windows are all jumbled, but this notion of like, I'm moving in the right direction, right? And that's what I hope this conversation is, a move in the right direction of how you can think to move together. And just to recap, again, we started by inviting you to think in the future, right? Well, what possibly could happen, right? And then think through, well, for that to happen, other things needed to happen. Right. And so you thought through that. And by doing that, right, that interim step stuff, you might have identified what might be right for this group to take on, potentially this group of leaders to take on. And we also shared a little bit of framework because, the way I like to do things is not just plan, but also bring you along, increase your capacity as a leader by introducing tools and share things along the way. So hopefully you can bring it to other elements. So we wanted to share a little bit of that for a little more to chew on after this. But also walk you through this notion of, well, if this group really wants to do something, really be clear. And I think the previous commenter just said it perfectly. It's like, I need to know exactly what we're doing and to what standard. And then I can know what I can do for my role to deliver that, right? And so that seems like the group, the group's work as well. As we're moving to close this conversation, I want to invite you to think about for yourself. And if we're not this is an opportunity for you to think about as a result of this conversation. And you don't have to say this out loud. I want you to think about this and probably check back with either Anne or I imagine Anne or whoever's convening this conversation continues, where you at, right? As a result of this conversation. It could be, I'm in. I know it's fully fleshed out, but I really want to be a part of this. Or I'm interested, but there's still some unknowns. I need to know how this works. I need to make sure this can work. Or it could be like, you know what, I'm not interested, but I do think someone from my org should be involved. So I would like to invite them to encourage them to consider it. Or it could be, based off what we're talking about, I'm not interested in this time, right? Just take, as a result of this conversation, kind of take stock of this and share back, right, with Anne at some point so that Anne knows how to engage you in this work. In this work continued, but that's my invitation for you to hold and consider as a result of this. And would like to start moving us to moving out of this conversation. And so we're going to do it like we did before. We check out just how are you as you're leaving the room. And one of my favorite questions I like to share is what is a new insight you gained because of this? Or what's a deep truth that was affirmed for you because you had this? Would like to make sure we whip around, and here's the game. We got to do this under 6 minutes because we turn into a pumpkin at 12 o'clock as Anne goes gallivanting across the country on her hog, her big Harley, Peter Fonda style.
Oh, yeah,
At least that's the fantasy in my mind. So we'll leave Anne to go last. Who will start us off and pass it on? How are you as you're leaving, and what's a new insight you gained, or maybe what's a deep truth that's affirmed because you had this conversation with your fellow leaders? Who'll begin and pass the mic? Think about 30 seconds per person on this.
So I'm really hungry because, daylight savings time has told everybody that it's a different time. And I am affirmed just in the importance of networking.
Thank you. Pass it on.
Let's see. David, you go next.
Thanks, Kim. I'm doing well. I join you, Kim, in being hungry. And I think I am deeply affirmed that this group of people really, I think, wants to are the right starting group of people to do this big thing that we're doing together. Over to Carolyn.
I'm leaving this conversation excited. I feel like, we all, it's comforting to know that everyone has questions and we're just trying to develop ideas and things like that, and excited that we're all interested in moving forward and a little bit, trying to find the pathway to that next step.
Thanks. Pass it on.
Christina?
I share your sentiments, Carolyn. I'm also quite excited. It's just great to come together with people that, are big thinkers and want to be able to see this obviously happen for their various regions, but also aren't afraid to tackle it too, which is a big deal, and not just give up.
Hand it off. Who's next?
Oh, we're going to hand it off to Melinda.
I am leaving this conversation pondering that notion of will the good of each other as other. I want to hear more about that. And also echoing all the sentiments. Every time we get together, it's so nice to be connected and feel connected across the state and hear different perspectives. And I think that's the heart of all of this. So I just want to thank everybody for sharing and for their participation. And I will pass it to Melanie.
Well, I join everybody else and I'm excited also. I'm invigorated, and I, as far as my insight, I want to jump on the information that states funding per state, and to get an idea in terms of how we can work on our rankings a little bit. And being here in the Southwest, sometimes I get excited also because there's so many best practices around here that I can bring back home. And I'll pass it off to Jay.
Thank you, Melanie. I think I will leave this conversation remaining ambivalent. Sorry, it's probably a acute or even terminal condition. But also grateful for Mac's facilitation, and thank you for keeping this thing moving and lively and taking us and getting us really focused. And just also super grateful to be among such brilliant, dedicated thinkers that almost make me believe that this stuff can happen.
Thanks. Where to next, Jay?
I will take it over to Bean since I brought her here. She knows who I'm talking about.
That's really the name I use. I don't know who this Mary Bergs person is, but I'm hugely relieved to know that there's this energy and ideas and people doing this work. I feel like I almost accidentally stumbled on this group by extending an invite to Jay for a conversation. So I'm very excited, and I'm even more curious.
Great.
And I will hand off to Greg.
I'm excited as well. The thing that keeps running through my mind is there like a low-hanging fruit project that we could jump into that could start to make this visible, and that instead of trying to find something that's all things for all people, is there one particular way we could start to show what a network approach looks like and where it could acquire more resources for the state? And I'm going to pass it off. I think Carolyn is the only person who hasn't shared yet.
I have already shared, but
is everybody gone? Who hasn't gone
I'm
yet?
trying to think, is anybody on there? I mean, Ann then is the only person.
Is Ann left? Yeah, Ann, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, I am grateful and thrilled that this network exists, that all of the great minds are still coming together and are enthusiastic about coming together. I'll take the ambivalence as more tinged with enthusiasm, Jay. And always learning. I've got lots of ideas. I've got lots of plans. I'm always looking for ways to coalesce them and use other people's strengths to help me do that. So thank you all for that. And thank you, Mac, for moving us through this so expertly. And then we'll figure out what comes next.
With
That's
that,
the thing.
with that, we're at 12 noon. So thanks so much for your time. And unless there's anything else, Ann, we're good to go.
I think we're good. Thank you all. We will ruminate about what comes after this. I've recorded this, so you'll all get a recording and other people will get it. And then onward.
The mural also will
Enjoy
stay
the
open.
Beautiful day.
The mural will also stay open. So you're welcome to keep interacting with it long after this and keep playing with it. So it's for you as
Oh, that's
virtually
good to
as you want.
know. We'll keep building on it.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you, David. Thank you all.